Please go to the Crucible box office, pick up your paper ticket. You will lose your seat if you don't go now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming here this afternoon. I'm really sorry the Crucible isn't big enough to take everybody. We'll have to expand it and put an atrium over this. Will that do? That'll be a help. Thanks ever so much for coming along. It's absolutely brilliant. This is the, I think I'm right in saying, 83rd event we've done as part of this campaign. And it's all over Britain. England, Wales, Scotland, everywhere. We're getting huge numbers of people coming. And I think the reason is because of there's a number of reasons. The first one is ours is a campaign about ideas, it's about optimism, it's about hope, it's about inclusion. And it's about recognising that everybody in our society has some good ideas. Everybody in our society has a contribution to make. And I think we have a political process that has become completely removed from the lifestyle and discussion of most ordinary people. And I understand, you might tell me if I'm wrong on this, that some of the popular papers and some people on the media are saying very unpleasant things about us and other people. Frankly, I don't care. We're not replying, we're not responding. We're not doing that kind of politics. I think there's nothing more off-putting to the majority of the population than seeing Parliament as a theatrical opportunity where people hurl abuse at each other and actually completely forget the reality of what life is like for the vast majority of people in this country. And so when Labour unfortunately lost the election in May, like I'm sure all of you, I was both very depressed and very angry and very sad about that. There was good stuff in the manifesto, no question about that, but the fundamental problem was the banking crisis of 2008 was created by banks, by greed, by excessive salaries with the top bankers and the bonus culture, and their lack of regulation and control. We did the right thing in taking the banks into public ownership. We did the wrong thing in putting the shares in a government holding company that a later chance the Exchequer could sell off. George Osborne has no right to sell off the RBS shares at a loss, which is what he's doing at the moment. Any more than they have a right to put forward a budget which includes £30 billion worth of sales of public assets in this year alone, tax relief for the very richest through inheritance tax, and then make massive cuts in the welfare budget to the most vulnerable and poorest people within our society. I think as a party, as a Labour Party and a Labour movement, we've got to do a couple of things. One is recognise where we come from, what we're about, and why we exist. People founded our movement, founded our unions, struggled to bring about democracy in our society, to get the right to vote, to get women the right to vote, to build up the principles behind the National Health Service and the universal welfare state. They struggled to achieve all of that. If we accept the politics of austerity, which essentially is saying that the unregulated banks and the subprime mortgage crisis have got to be paid for by the poorest and most vulnerable in our society, by zero-hours contracts, by low wages, by unemployment, then I think we're doing something fundamentally wrong. We have to challenge the politics of it, and it is a political trick which is about rolling back the state and taking opportunities away from the majority of the population. 5 years of Tory Lib Dem government has led to some of the greatest levels of inequality of any country in Europe. Another 5 years, it's going to be grotesque levels of inequality. That is what the Tories and the Lib Dems, well, Lib Dems don't need to worry about them too much, but it's what the Tories are absolutely about. But this is a process and an election for, yes, the leader and deputy leader of the Labour Party, but it's also something wider than that. When this contest begun, like everyone else, as I said, I was depressed by the election result. I wanted there to be a proper debate about where we're going and what we're doing as a party. That wasn't to be. We had this contest, and so with great difficulty we managed to get on the ballot paper. You all know it was very difficult. And I thank those MPs that nominated, and I thank those MPs that supported, and I thank all those people that got onto social media to assist us in getting those nominations. So we got there. And then we started on this campaign. It's a campaign in which we're putting out a lot of ideas. We're putting out ideas on economy, on welfare, on NHS, on mental health, on arts and culture, on transport, on devolution of powers, on development in the north of England, what happens to devolved assemblies like in Scotland and Wales, whole lots and lots of different ideas. Because I don't want there to be policy making in the Labour Party which is top down with a see-all, know-all leader that decides what's going to happen and passes it down the line. The principles of the Labour movement are about local and participative democracy, and that's the message we're trying to put forward. So let's deal with a couple of issues. Firstly, how you deal with austerity. Essentially, what the government is saying is we have to cut our way to prosperity. So they made massive cuts in 2010. That's made the situation considerably worse, and they're now proposing a whole lot more cuts in the autumn statement on what's going on. Our problem as a Labour Party is that in the last election we were also going along with the politics of austerity and saying that we too would be making cuts in order to achieve an arbitrary date by which we achieve a budget surplus. Now don't get me wrong, I don't think running a deficit permanently is a particularly good idea, but what I do think is you regain your strength, you get a good position when you invest in the economy, when you grow the economy. You can't cut your way to prosperity, you have to grow your way to prosperity. So what we're suggesting is an investment through a national investment bank to improve infrastructure all over the country, a national investment bank that will invest in housing, a national investment bank that will invest in new industries, in green technology and alternative energy sources. There's a whole lot of areas in which people in this country are absolutely good and brilliant, which have not had sufficient investment in them. A national investment bank would be part of that process. And then you look at the social and environmental issues that we face. First up is housing. The housing crisis is in every part of the country, albeit in slightly different forms. But we have insufficient investment in new council housing everywhere in Britain. We have a government that's obsessed with selling off housing association property, which actually is not theirs to sell in the first place, and continuing with tax relief in investment into the private rented sector, which is then subsidised by the DWP budget through housing benefits. So we have a situation where we're spending public money on a housing shortage in order to enrich a small number of people that are able to make money out of the private rented sector on unregulated rents. It doesn't actually make a great deal of sense. Surely we should instead be investing that money in council housing and in developing a housing that is there for all, rather than the crisis that we have at the present time. A national investment bank would be available to do that. You then look at the other areas of public service, and whilst I welcome any new hospital that was built, any new school that was built, and it is still being built, but I have to say this: funding those things through private finance initiative is not a very sensible way of doing it. We lose control, we pay through the nose, and we don't get very much at the end of it. And so, again, the suggestion is that you fund things through a properly funded public investment process. And then you move on to the other big issues that face our society: education, health and welfare. Let's deal with education first. This government is preventing any local authority building any new school unless it's a free school, is encouraging academies which are quasi-independent of local government and are supposedly run by central government, and promoting free schools where there isn't even a requirement of having qualified teachers in those places. I think cities like Sheffield had a great record as local education authorities. Great record in innovative ideas in education by promoting a family of schools and family of colleges and a family of educational opportunity and achievement, including adult education. So we're proposing that we strengthen rather than weaken the local education authority and bring the free schools and academies back into the local authority family of schools. And also that instead of treating education as a marketable commodity, which is too often what happens, and penalising students with massive debts at the end of their course, look at what other countries do in Europe. It's not particularly extreme to say that we all benefit from a well-educated, well-qualified community. If we travel on a train and it's safe, and it's well designed and well run, that's because somebody, somewhere, studied, worked hard, became an engineer in order to maintain that train, or design that train. Same with buildings, same with everything else in our lives. We all benefit from the education of everybody else. And so one of the suggestions, and they are suggestions we put forward, is a very small, modest rise in corporation tax rather than a cut in corporation tax in order to cover the cost of student fees, so students do not leave with these massive debts at the end of their university education. I oppose the introduction of fees in the first place, and I oppose the rise to 3,000, now 9,000. What's the government's alternative on this? To raise student fees to unlimited levels. So Oxbridge no doubt will get away with charging £25,000, £30,000, and they say it's going to be covered by scholarships. Well, we're told in the USA that anyone can get to an Ivy League university if they get a scholarship. Well, that may well be true, and Bill Clinton did get a scholarship and did get to an Ivy League university, and he went on to become President of the United States. Well done, Bill Clinton, bully for him. The problem is, what you don't hear about is the tens of hundreds of thousands of other poor students all across the USA who didn't get a scholarship, didn't get to go to an Ivy League university, didn't get to go on in life. I don't want a system based on charity and scholarships. I want a system based on universal values that every student that can benefit from it should have the opportunity to go to college or university, pursue a qualification, be it a vocational qualification or an academic qualification. We all benefit from it. And also, I'm just depressed and sad at the way in which adult education is being destroyed in our society at the present time. It provides that opportunity for people to go back to college in the future and learn something if that's what they want to do. And I think that's the kind of good society that we want to be able to live in. We are, at the moment, getting a sort of almost tsunami of abuse on the media and others about people who legitimately claim benefits to which they're entitled through the DWP, the welfare system. In reality, what's happening is there's been massive cuts. In reality, the benefits available for people with disabilities have been cut. The availability for work test is utterly brutal, and the government was finally forced a couple of days ago into publishing the